From wandering fires to settled hearths, humanity learned to shape its world. In the dawn of a new era, a young woman kneels in a valley, her fingers dusty with crushed barley. Smoke curls from a clay hearth. This quiet morning, repeated in homelands across the globe, marks the birth of agriculture and the beginning of cities. Harvests fed more mouths, and surplus gave rise to hierarchy, rule, and the first records. Villages swelled into towns, and towns grew into civilizations, drawn to the promise of the rivers. As the Nile's floodwaters receded, scribes pressed reeds into wet clay. Far to the east, between the Tigris and Euphrates, great walls rose against the horizon, and laws were carved into stone. Writing was power, a tool to track grain, debts, and treaties. Temples and palaces organized labor and belief, as the map of the known world widened with each passing generation. On an Indus quay, monsoon winds rattled rigging as traders exchanged beads and seals. Along the Yellow River, officials measured tax and time. In this new urban landscape, power shifted from the chieftain's tent to the state official's office. But these trade routes carried more than spices and silk. They carried ideas. In a quiet hall, a teacher's bell marks a moment of learning. Across continents, new ways of thinking took root. Confucianism offered a blueprint for a harmonious society. Buddhism provided comfort for suffering. Hinduism wove together ancient practice and profound story. These teachings spread like wildfire, offering millions a path for how to live, and rulers a guide for how to listen. In a courtyard by the sea, a family whispered a covenant as their neighbors proclaimed a gospel. Across the great classical empires, laws, roads, and coins began to bind strangers together. These shared beliefs and systems created communities strong enough to weather hardship. The echoes of their choices are still with us, in our calendars, our legal systems, and our ideals of civic life. On the Indian Ocean, a helmsman read the stars. In the desert, camel bells faded as caravans journeyed the Silk Roads. Along these arteries of exchange, paper, numbers, and medicine moved across borders, transforming societies. These routes were not just lines on a map, they were the threads of an increasingly connected world. In a grand library, scholars of the Islamic Golden Age copied star charts, preserving the knowledge of the ancients. Across the steppe, Mongol messengers thundered on horseback, carrying news from court to court. In Africa and the Americas, vibrant civilizations thrived with cities of gold and stone. But this world was shattered by the 14th century pandemic, which stilled markets and prayers alike. Out of that silence, sailors prepared for voyages that would redraw the map of the world forever. In a salt-stung port in the early 1600s, a deckhand tastes brine on cracked lips. Crates of maize and silver thud onto wet planks. Breath carries fevers no one can name. This is the Columbian Exchange, a vast, often violent remixing of diets, ecologies, and fortunes that forged the first global economy. By candlelight, a lens lifted to the heavens challenged old truths. The Enlightenment questioned the nature of power, and revolutions in the Atlantic redefined the meaning of citizen. In 1517, dissent had found a new, powerful voice. Steam and steel soon reshaped the planet, turning farms into factories and villages into sprawling industrial cities. On a parade ground, flags ripple before tense crowds. The age of high imperialism gave way to brutal world wars and genocide. After 1945, the United Nations offered a new forum for dialogue as decolonization remade the globe. A long Cold War carved deep divisions, which were later bridged and redefined by the digital revolution. Today, we face our own challenges. Artificial intelligence shapes our ethics, and global pandemics circle the planet. The debates are new, but the themes are ancient. fights over authority, community, and rights. Understanding this long story helps us navigate our own turbulent times with less fear and more wisdom. The next chapter is still being written.